Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and as always, I am honored and privileged that you decided to make me and everybody else here in the live chat a part of your day. This is the show, of course, we do every single day, talking about all the biggest things in the world of movie and television, things like that, the things that you guys want to talk about. Because, yes, I do pick out a couple of topics specifically, but mostly this show is dictated by the topics and questions that you guys send in to me. You guys tell me what you want us all here to talk about. Here's how you get a topic or a question on the John Campea Show. Simply email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. That's john@thejohncampeashow.com. And this is important, guys. Make sure you put that word topic in the subject line. If a lot of you guys still aren't doing that, put the word topic in the subject line, or else I'm not going to be able to get around to your question. Also, make sure keep your email to 90 words or less. Do not write me your thesis because I don't have time to read them if they're that long. And even if I wanted to, I couldn't physically fit the questions on the screen. Now, once I get through the, I believe, 6 topics and email questions that you guys have sent in to me, I'm going to go over to the live viewers because a whole bunch of you guys watching me live. I do this show live every day, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. On the weekends, it varies to when I get out of bed on the weekends, but normally I like to do it at 9 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday. But 8 a.m. Monday through Friday is when I do the show live. And when I go to you guys on the live chat board, here's how you guys get a live question into me. Simply jump on Twitter and start out a tweet with @John Campea and then write out your question and fire it off. And I will get to as many of the live tweets that you guys send as I can. Maybe you'll see your tweet pop up here on the bottom of the screen. I know there's a whole bunch of things you guys are going to want to talk about once we get to the end of the show, but let's get started off with the stuff I've picked out. And the first thing I want to talk about here today is a particular piece of movie news that came out regarding, of course, this week's big opening, Thor Ragnarok. Now, of course, as many of you know, as Marvel will do, Marvel has opened Thor Ragnarok in a bunch of international markets first last week before it opens here in North America this week. Now, according to reports, they were tracking the international numbers for Thor Ragnarok to come in at around $85 to $100 million for its international take. Well, according to the reports in Forbes and Box Office Mojo, Thor Ragnarok exceeded those numbers and came in at $106 million for its international opening weekend. Now, it's important to know this. When we talk about, opening weekend numbers, like we always talk about, okay, Captain America opened with this much an opening weekend. Geostorm opened with this much an opening weekend. When we talk about opening numbers, the only numbers that are actually counted is North American numbers. So even though Thor Ragnarok already made $106 million internationally, when Thor Ragnarok opens here in the United States and Canada, those numbers don't count. The official opening weekend box numbers are only counted with domestic numbers. So don't think that has anything to do. When you hear that Thor Ragnarok opens with whatever, don't go. If somebody says to you, yeah, but that's only because it also opened internationally. No. International numbers never count. They never count those for opening weekend, all right? So just keep that in mind. Thor Ragnarok will open with what it opens with. Now, a bunch of people are projecting around $100 to $115 million opening weekend domestically for Thor Ragnarok this coming weekend. Some people are saying it could be as high as $125 million opening weekend. I think it's going to go closer to that $125 million opening weekend domestic number. But we're already seeing Thor Ragnarok have some success. And, one of the reasons that I don't think, despite all the positive buzz and all the great reviews that Thor Ragnarok is getting, one of the reasons I don't think it's going to be a super mega blockbuster hit. Like, it's going to be a hit, absolutely. 125 million opening weekend is going to be fantastic. It'll clearly be the biggest opening of any Thor movie so far. But one of the reasons that I've suspected it's not going to hit like 150, 160, 170 million dollar opening weekend domestically is because I think while the marketing campaign has been really cool, I think it may feel a little too trippy for some people. I think there are going to be some people in the average movie-going audience who are going to look at the psychedelic colors and the music and all that kind of stuff, and I think it's not going to resonate with a certain segment of the average movie-going audience. So that's why I don't think it's going to be like a $170 million opening weekend. Now, 125, 130, 135 even, I think that's possible. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But understanding my concern, I'm pleasantly surprised to hear that it exceeded expectations in the international box office market as well. Maybe that means it will exceed domestic expectations as well. I want to know what you guys think. How do you think Thor Ragnarok is going to do on its opening weekend here? I'm guessing around 125. Do you see it going higher? Do you see it going lower? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you guys are watching live, maybe put in some of your tweets a little bit later and let me know what you think Thor Ragnarok is going to do opening weekend. All right, now let's move on to the first emailed in topic and question that you guys have sent in to me. And that first question today comes to us from my Patreon supporter, Adil Labig, who writes, have you seen this video showing how Warner Brothers has changed the look of Batman vs. Superman to better fit the tone of Wonder Woman and Justice League, changing Zack Snyder's look of the film? This is only happening with the digital copies, not physical copies. I know it's their movie, but do you think this is right? I personally love the look of Batman vs. Superman and Man of Steel, and I'm not sure that this is right. Well, thanks a lot for the question, man. And in the last 24 hours or so, my Twitter started blowing up, and you probably had this happen to you guys as well. My Twitter started blowing up with people writing and saying, John, did you hear that Warner Brothers has changed the color palette of Batman vs. Superman so that it fits in better with the color palette of Wonder Woman and Justice League? I'm like, really? So I started seeing all these tweets. I thought, okay, I'll get around to looking into that a bit later. So yesterday, I start doing some snooping around and looking around, and I can't find anything anywhere about Warner Brothers announcing that they have changed the color grading of Batman versus Superman. I can't find anywhere saying that, and most people are saying this is mostly happening on iTunes. Like it wasn't happening on the other streaming platforms, but it was happening on iTunes. And they changed it so it would match Wonder Woman and Justice League. And again, I kept searching. I couldn't find anything anywhere, any kind of official word from iTunes, any kind of official word from Warner Brothers saying that they have done that. The best explanation I've been able to come up with is this. And there are a couple of YouTube channels that are putting up videos saying, see, they changed it because here's what it looked like before and here's what it looks like now. They changed it and they changed it to match Wonder Woman and Justice League. Okay. From all the reading that I did on it, and maybe you guys know something different than me. That's the great thing about us having a fan community is we can bounce off each other. But everything I've been able to find out basically points to this. Warner Brothers did not change the color grading on Batman versus Superman. They didn't. What happened is that iTunes, and I think another service as well, they did an automatic grade change. They moved the film to 4K and they put up an HDR version. Now that's HDR is high dynamic range. We talked about that on the show last week. Somebody was asking a question about high dynamic range. So the movie did not change their color grading. What they simply did was they now have a version that is 4K and HDR. Now, not every TV is HDR capable. Most movies are not available in HDR yet, although that is starting to change. Now, what is HDR? What is high dynamic range? Within all video, there is a certain range between the darkest dark and the brightest white, okay? So let's just say, let's put it in terms of numbers and say there's 50 points of difference on your television between the darkest black and the whitest white. And there's like 50 points of difference between there. What high dynamic range, and I'm oversimplifying it, but basically, what high dynamic range is it takes that difference between the darkest possible black it can have and the brightest possible white it can have, and it increases that range. So you have deeper, darker blacks, brighter whites, richer color. That's what high dynamic range basically does, because when you can increase the contrast between your blacks and your whites and how far that can go, you're going to get some image change, or at least perceivable image changes, right? So from what I was reading in several articles is that iTunes did an automatic conversion for a number of people who already owned it, digitally that is, and they put up an HDR version. Now, not everybody would notice it because not everybody has an HDR capable TV. Some people would say, but John, I already have a 4K TV and it looked different before. Yes, but before, just because your TV was HDR capable doesn't mean the video stream you were getting was an HDR video screen. It's like HD, right? If you have a television that can do 1080p, that's great. If the digital copy you have is a 720 digital copy, it's 720. It doesn't matter if your TV is capable of 1080. Maybe there's some kind of whack around hack where it can up convert to 1080, but that's not true 1080. It's for HDR, you have to have a TV that can receive HDR and interpolate HDR and present you HDR, but you also have to have source material that is HDR. And if you only have one or the other, you're not going to get the benefits of HDR or high dynamic range, as the case may be. So from what I can tell and from what I can see and from a number of articles I'm now reading online is that there was even a little bit of a bug in one of the conversions where it did something a little bit funky to the color. The bottom line is this. I haven't seen anything to suggest that Warner Brothers went in and changed the coloring of Batman versus Superman. Certainly not enough evidence to give a reason for it. And here, my one point of concern is this. I'm not concerned that there are some YouTube channels saying things like, Warner Brothers changed it. Because, hey, I understand why you would say that. If you're looking at your copy of Batman versus Superman, and then you look at a newer copy of it and you're seeing differences, I don't blame you at all for making the conclusion, at least before you look into it heavily, I don't blame anybody at all for making the conclusion, hey, Warner Brothers changed it. I do take issue with people then giving a reason why Warner Brothers did it when Warner Brothers never did it in the first place, nor did they say there was a reason. Because there are some people out there stating as fact, number one, Warner Brothers changed the coloring, and number two, the reason they did it was to better match Wonder Woman and Justice League. It's like, they never said that. Nobody is even suggesting that. There's no report out there that says, they're just people made an assumption as to why they did it, even though they didn't do it at all. And then they jump out ahead of it and say, here's the reason why. Now, for all I know, between when I started shooting this show and this moment, maybe Warner Brothers comes out and says, oh yeah, we did change the color palette. I mean, that's fine. If that happens, great. Now we have an official source. But I'm just saying, as of right now, I haven't seen anything out of Warner Brothers or iTunes other than the reports I'm reading and some text stuff saying that they just did an up conversion, changed the video file to an HDR file. They did not actually do a color grade on the movie. Now, let's move on to the second part of the question. Let's get into the theoreticals here for a second. Within the conversations I saw going on online yesterday about, did Warner Brothers change the color, there erupted a sub-debate about whether Warner Brothers even should have. Now, look, I understand Warner Brothers didn't actually do anything, but if Warner Brothers had changed the color grading on Batman versus Superman, a sub-debate broke out on whether or not that ruined the movie, whether or not they even had the right to do it, if that's disrespectful to Zack Snyder that they did that and all that kind of stuff. So now we're talking in theoreticals. In theory, though, I would still make the arguments like, if Warner Brothers had done that, which there's no evidence that they did, but if Warner Brothers had done that, it's totally within their rights to do it. Is it disrespectful to Zack Snyder? No. It's not Zack Snyder's movie. And as much as I love Batman, as much as I love Man of Steel, and you all know how I feel about Man of Steel, it's not Zack Snyder's movie. It's Warner Brothers' movie. But Zack Snyder was the director. Doesn't matter. It ain't his movie. Let's put it this way. Let's say you bought that badass new Lego Death Star. I can't remember how much that even cost. I think it was like $300. Maybe it was like $500. I'm not sure. For argument's sake, let's say it's $300. Let's say you go to the store and you buy with your money the Lego Death Star. Okay, you bought it, your money, and you brought it home and you look at it and you're like, man, I'm no good at these things, putting these things together. I just want to have this thing put together for me. So you get your buddy down the street who's pretty good at putting the Lego stuff together, and you say, and his name is Ricky Roll, and you say, hey, Ricky Roll, come on over here. Why is his name Ricky Roll? I have no idea. I just pulled the name out of my ass. So, Ricky Roll, come on over. If I give you $30, can you put this thing together for me? And Ricky Roll says, sure, you pay me $30 and I will put it together for you. Great. So you pay Ricky Roll $30. He comes over to your house and he puts together your Lego Death Star for you. Let me ask you a question. Does that Lego Death Star now belong to Ricky Roll, or is it still yours? Obviously, the answer is it is still yours. You paid for it. You bought it. And then you compensated Ricky Roll. You paid him for his time to come in and do the artistic work of it, of putting the whole thing together for you. But it's still yours. And guess what? If the day after Ricky Roll puts your Death Star Lego thing together, if the day after he does that, and he worked really hard on it, you decide you want to paint it plaid, it's not disrespectful to Ricky Roll that you're painting it plaid, because you paid Ricky Roll for his time and it's your Death Star and you can do whatever the hell you want with it because it's yours. It's not disrespectful. You paid the dude to do his great work. He put it together perfectly for it. You paid for all the materials. You paid for the Lego thing. You're the one who bought it, and it's yours. You can do whatever you want with it. And it's not disrespectful to Ricky, because you think Ricky Roll did a great job of putting it together, but you wanted it to look a little different, so you painted it. It is totally within your right, number one, and it is not disrespectful to the person you had come and work on it before, because it's yours. It's yours. Man of Steel is Warner Brothers. Batman vs. Superman is Warner Brothers. Justice League does not belong to Zack Snyder. It does not belong to Joss Whedon. It doesn't belong to Ben Affleck. It doesn't belong to Jeff Johns. It belongs to Warner Brothers. They own it. They can do whatever they want with it. And again, that's all just in theory, because Warner Brothers didn't change the color grading on Batman vs. Superman. It's just the 4K HDR conversion that gives it a bit of a different appearance. And that'll all go to taste. And even if they had changed it, which I'm not sure that they did, but even if they had changed it, it's totally within the rights. And let's be honest here. You may like the color grading of Batman vs. Superman. You may not like the color grading of Batman vs. Superman. Changing the color grade will not make a bad movie good. Changing a color grade will not make a good movie bad. If you like Batman vs. Superman like me, then if they had gone in and changed the color grade a bit to richen up the colors a bit, that doesn't suddenly make it an unwatchable movie. If you liked Batman vs. Superman and them doing a slight color grade change suddenly makes you dislike the movie, then the movie was never good in the first place. And if you're somebody who disliked Batman vs. Superman, them doing the color grade change is not going to make it a movie you suddenly like. If it does, then you probably actually like the movie in the first place. So let's not act like it's the be-all and end-all of everything. And I honestly don't understand why so many people got so riled up about this concept in the first place. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. I'm sure you guys have a lot of thoughts on it as well. Jump into the comments section. Let me know what you guys think. And again, I'm not bashing anybody who thought Warner Brothers did that, because if, just the eye test, you see one version of it, it looks one way, and you see another version of it, it looks another way. Hey, you'd be forgiven for jumping to a conclusion. I got no problem with that. But just look into it a little bit more after that, and you'll find that, it doesn't look like Warner Brothers actually did anything. Anyway, that's that for that topic. Let's move on now to the next topic today. And the next topic today comes to us from Jack Wickman, who writes, "Hey, John, I was wondering, where the heck is Tintin 2? I really enjoyed the first one, directed by Steven Spielberg. It had a great old-fashioned adventure vibe, and it was a lot of fun. It's been 6 years since that film, and though it's been talked about here and there, still no sign. What do you think? Thanks, and keep up the great solo run." Yeah, man, you know what? That Tintin movie, I got to admit, I was one of the people, when they announced Peter Jackson and Steven Spielberg, at the time, the hottest director in Hollywood in Peter Jackson, and the greatest filmmaker of all time in Steven Spielberg, working together. And they had this plan, if you remember. They were going to do a bunch of Tintin films. They're going to do 3 Tintin films, maybe more. The first one, I believe Peter Jackson was producing and Steven Spielberg was going to direct. And then for the second one, they were going to switch, where Steven Spielberg was going to produce and Peter Jackson would direct. And then I can't remember who was going to do the third one. But anyway, so that was the plan. The first Tintin comes out. You know what? It's pretty damn good. I liked it. I had my doubts about it, but it's actually pretty damn good. I enjoyed that film. I think a lot of you guys did too. And over the last number of months, I've had a bunch of people ask me, like, hey, where is this Tintin 2? What's going on? Okay, so back in the summer of 2016, there was a story that came out that Steven Spielberg claimed that Peter Jackson, his next film, now this is back in June of 2016, okay? Steven Spielberg said that Peter Jackson was going to be working on a new secret movie for Amblin Entertainment. He was going to be working on a new secret movie for them. And then after he was done that movie, they were going to start working on Tintin 2. Okay. That was over a year ago. We still haven't heard anything new about any Tintin project. I certainly haven't heard anything new about what this secret mystery Amblin Entertainment mystery project was. I have no idea what that's about. That was over a year ago. That was a year and a few months ago. And we still have heard nothing about it. And when you look on Steven Spielberg's agenda for the next couple of years, he's incredibly busy. Peter Jackson does on his IMDb page still have a Tintin 2 project listed, but as announced. It doesn't have any sort of a date. It doesn't have any updates, nothing like that. While nobody has said this, there has been no official announcement that Tintin 2 is not happening, okay? Just be clear about that. I'm about to speculate, okay? My speculation at this point is is that the project's dead. Look, the first Tintin, while enjoyable, and it did okay, it didn't make 400 million or anything, but it made about 375 million dollars worldwide, something in that neighborhood. I'm not quite sure what the production budget on it was. I know it wasn't cheap. So whether it was a little bit profitable or barely broke even or maybe lost a little bit of money, I'm not sure. I can't say that until I know what the production budget was, and I don't know what the production budget on it was. But still, 374 million is nothing to sneeze at. That's not bad, depending on how much it cost to make. But it wasn't obviously a huge blockbuster hit. That much is clear. So when you're talking about guys like Steven Spielberg and you're talking about guys like Peter Jackson, and Steven Spielberg, look, he's in his 70s now. He's still the greatest filmmaker of all time. But I mean, how many more years is he going to want to be working? Another 10 years, maybe? Much longer before he just wants to sit back and say, you know what? I have the greatest film career of all time. I got Oscars on my mantle. I got rolls of $100 bills by the fireplace that I use to keep my house warm. I just throw rolls of $100 bills in the fireplace to warm my house. I got everything. Time for me to kick back and relax and enjoy retirement. At some point, Steven Spielberg is going to do that. So with all the projects that he may still have that he wants to do, is Tintin 2 a high priority for him? Is Tintin 2 a high priority for him? Is Tintin 2 still a high priority for Peter Jackson? I don't know that it is. So I'm going to speculate that I think the project's done. I don't think we're going to see Tintin 2. Watch this. 3 p.m. today. Peter Jackson, Steven Spielberg announced Tintin 2 coming in 2019. But I'd be thrilled if that happens. But yeah, it's been forever. It's been 6 years since the first. Any momentum they had from that first one is now gone. They seem to have moved on to other projects. So I mean, I don't know, unless you guys have heard anything really big in the past, like announced in the past month or so that I just, for some reason, missed. It looks like Tintin 2 might be off the old launch pad. And who knows? We'll have to wait and see, I guess. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Andrew Reyes, writes, "Hey, John, my question is, could movies such as Blade Runner 2049, a box office flop but a great movie, get re-released into theaters at some point in the future as sort of a second chance to regain some income and popularity?" Oh, thanks a lot for the question, man. And yeah, look, Blade Runner 2049 is a big story. Not because it's a huge popular story, but it's a big story in the sense that, look, you have one of the hottest directors today making a really good movie on a very recognizable IP, and they do everything right, other than they blew their marketing campaign. And I made a video about that. You can go and find that, about the reason why, I think the main reason why Blade Runner 2049 flopped at the box office is because they created the main cardinal sin. They put out all these trailers and never once gave the audience any clue as to what the movie was about. Now, there's a difference between giving too much away and not even telling your audience what this movie is about. You have to tell the audience. If you're trying to convince people to come out of their houses, travel to the movie theater, plop down $15 for a movie, $30 if they're taking a date, if you want to convince people to do that, you got to at least tell them, hey, here's what our movie is about. Don't give away all the spoilers. But here's what our movie's about. If you're trying to convince people to come to your theater, you're not even going to tell them what the movie's about. Why should they bother coming to the theater to buy a ticket? And a lot of people didn't. Most people stayed away. But at any rate, that's the main reason for its failure. And I think that a lot of people are going to be talking about this for years. So the question is, could it get a re-release? Well, here's the thing. Studios don't re-release films to give the films a second chance. That's not why they re-release films. Studios re-release films because it is an expensive endeavor to put a movie into theaters. That's an expensive endeavor. And if a studio has a movie that they lost a bunch of money on, do you think they're lining up to spend even more money to put it back in the theater? Studios don't put movies back into re-release to give it another chance. What they do is they put movies back into re-release if they think there's more money to be made. So you re-release Jurassic Park because they believe people will come out to the theater to watch Jurassic Park on the big screen again. And they did. They re-released Back to the Future because they thought, you know what, it's the 20th or whatever anniversary it was of Back to the Future when they did that. This is back in my AMC days. But they re-released Back to the Future to celebrate the anniversary of it because they believed, not because they thought, oh, Back to the Future needs another chance. No, they believed if we put this back in the theaters, it's going to make us money. And they did. And they did make money. That's why studios now it doesn't always work, but that is the motivation. The motivation is not to give movies a second chance. It's for them to make more money. And re-releasing a Blade Runner 2049, I think it was probably going to end up costing them more money to do it than it would be for whatever additional box office revenue they garner after that. I mean, it's still in theater. People can go see it now, and they're not. So, no, I don't think we're going to see a movie like Blade Runner 2049 or any movie that suffered at the box office and lost their studio's money. I don't think you're going to see people doing re-releases of those. All right, guys. Hey, listen, before I move on to the next topic, I'm going to take my quick commercial break here. This is my daily shameless plug for my Patreon. Now, as many of you guys know, I left the corporate overlords. I no longer work for any corporations. I wanted to do this thing independently, and that takes full-time commitment from me. And I'm only able to do that and make the videos I make because of the support of my Patreon supporters. Listen, guys, do me a favor. If you're somebody who enjoys my content and you enjoy hanging out and watching these shows and whatever, do me a favor, head on over to www.patreon.com/John Campea. Take a look around there. There's a whole bunch of information on a couple of things. One, why I need Patreon. Two, how being a Patreon supporter actually supports the content we do and helps make these shows possible. And three, what benefits there are to being a Patreon supporter. I am amazingly grateful for the people who are Patreon supporters. So take a look around and maybe you'll want to become one of my Patreon supporters too and be one of the people responsible for making these shows possible. And that's awesome if you can. And if you don't, that's totally fine too. I'm just glad you're here joining us for the conversation. All right, with the shameless plug now out of the way, let's move on to the next question. And the next question comes to us from Jonathan Spearoff, who writes, considering all the problems that films like Solo and Rogue One had during production, do you think Disney jumped the gun in committing to one Star Wars film every year, much like studios jumping the gun on shared universes? Do you think post-Episode 9, Disney might scale down to a Star Wars every 2 or 3 years instead of every one? Well, thanks a lot for the question. And yeah, look, with the Han Solo movie, there's definitely drama. There was a bit of upheaval with Rogue One. Actually, not as much as people think there was. But then, of course, there was the Boba Fett movie that was supposed to be directed by Josh Trank, the director of the most recent Fantastic Four, at least in title, until the studio hijacked it from him. But anyway, so you had all this drama and stuff like that. Would this make Star Wars and Lucasfilm and Disney consider making one Star Wars movie every couple of years? Do they think they need to scale back? Do they bite off more than they can chew? My answer to that is no. And here's why. All the problems they have had, especially when you look at this whole fiasco they had with the Han Solo movie, the fiasco they had with the Josh Trank situation, whatever. All their problems, and of course, they just changed directors for Episode 9 as well. All of their problems comes down to the one same problem, which is Disney and Lucasfilm, and maybe it's Kathleen Kennedy. I'm a big Kathleen Kennedy fan. Everybody knows I'm a Kathleen Kennedy supporter. I adore Kathleen Kennedy. But she is the head of Lucasfilm. She is the buck stops here person. And the one single problem that has been present in all those situations that we've talked about has all come down to one root cause, which is Lucasfilm failing to make 100% sure, to make sure that they know that they and their potential director for whatever this new movie is are on the same page. They have failed to ensure the most important thing the studio can do, which is hiring the right director for a project. They have failed to make 110% positive that they're on the same page with this potential director before coming out to the world and saying, we've hired this new guy. And they weren't 100% sure that they were on the same page. That has been the mistake they've had with Episode 9. That was the mistake that they've had with the Han Solo movie. That is the mistake that they had with the Josh Trank thing. Pardon me, I had almonds earlier. I got a little almond shell caught in my throat. That is the root one problem. And if that is the root one true problem, because really, there have been no other problems with the Star Wars films. Any problem there's been has always come to that one thing, that Kathleen Kennedy has failed. And I'm a big Kathleen Kennedy fan, okay? But, even Steven Spielberg has bad days at the office. Kathleen Kennedy, her one area of weakness that I can tell, has been failing to properly identify whether or not she and her team are on the same page with a potential director before hiring them and letting them go loose and announcing to the world, blah, 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 and only later to find out we're not on the same page, then that's on you. That's on you for not knowing that for certain before making the announcements. Anyway, I think Disney and Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy recognize that that has been their flaw. That has been their weakness. And if that's the weakness, then you can correct that. That's not something that would make you go, oh, let's do only one movie every 2 or 3 years. Well, if you do that, then you still have the same challenge. Whether you do a new movie every week or a new movie every 5 years, you at some point still have to sit down and pick a director and make sure you're on the same page with them. I think Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, and Disney have taken steps, are going to make sure they put a new process in place to make sure they truly vet their potential directors moving forward to get on the same page and move forward. I think that's one of the main reasons J.J. Abrams was brought in to direct episode 9 is because, okay, look, we need to get a new system in place for vetting and making 100% sure we're on the same page with our directors. Well, we got to get a director in for episode 9. You know what? We know we're on the same page with J.J. Abrams. Like, we know we're on the same page with him. So, and The Force Awakens made over $2 billion at the box office. So let's go to J.J. Abrams and get him to come in and do episode 9. I don't think that's the only reason they got J.J., but I think that probably was one of the big determining factors in it as well. So understanding that that's their problem, then that doesn't have to upheave their one movie a year thing. Look, you got Disney, or you got, I should say Marvel, and you've got DC making like 2, 3, some people are suggesting pushing 4 movies a year. Lucasfilm can do one. Lucasfilm can do one film a year. They just got to fix their picking their director process and get that right. Anyway, that's just my thought. What do you guys think? Jump in the comments section below and let me know. All right, guys, I just got 2 more email topics, and then I'm going to go to your live questions for those of you who are watching live. And the next question comes to us from Elijah Brown, who writes, "Hey, John, my question is this. Venom is definitely an interesting and brilliant choice for a solo film. I completely agree. They started production. However, even with the outstanding talent they have, such as Tom Hardy, there's no Spider-Man, or at least no confirmation. How can this movie work?" Well, this has been the big refrain from a lot of people who are cautious. Let's just say cautious, or even let's go as far as pessimistic. Pessimistic about a potential Venom movie. Despite the fact that they've brought on great behind the camera talent, despite the fact that they are bringing on great in front of the camera talent, despite the fact that Spider-Man Homecoming, which was a collaboration between Sony and Marvel, worked great, despite the fact that Sony has made several great Spider-Man universe films all on their own, from Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, The Amazing Spider-Man 1, they've done a very, very good job, and they dropped the ball a couple times. Absolutely, no denying that. But some people are still pessimistic, and the main root cause for the pessimism, besides the fact that it's Sony, seems to come from the fact that, well, you can't do a Venom movie without Spider-Man. You just can't do it. According to who? No, seriously, according to who? Sony seems to think you can do it. They seem to have found a way with their script that they think works and will work for the audience. And you say, but John, you can't have a universe without Spider-Man and have Venom. Venom is modeled after Spider-Man. True enough. Absolutely. That's not to say there won't be something that explains the origin of Venom. Maybe even it does involve a Spider-Man. We just don't know. And Spider-Man doesn't even have to be in the movie for them to do that. He just doesn't have to be there. And there's a lot of, if you go through the canon and all the stuff in the comics, there's a lot of solo Venom stuff. There is a lot of Venom stuff in the comics done without Spider-Man. And guess what? The majority of the film-going audience who are not comic book nerds, they don't think that, because a lot of them don't even know who Venom is, let alone the fact that he's supposed to be connected to Spider-Man. All I'm suggesting, look, if I was the head of a studio and I had the Venom property, would I start off Venom with Spider-Man? Yes, I would. That's what I would do. I agree with you on that. Absolutely. But just because that's the way I would do it, and that's just because the way you would do it, doesn't mean Sony doesn't have a great idea for doing it. And all I'm suggesting to my friends who are saying to me, it can't work without Spider-Man, is, well, you know what? You don't know what they have planned. Just take a step back, take a breath. Obviously, they feel pretty confident in it. And obviously, Tom Hardy, who is notoriously selective about the movies he'll be involved in, obviously, Tom Hardy thinks this is a good move. And he likes the script. So he got himself plugged in. let's just take a breath. And look, when the movie comes out, it's either going to be awesome or it's going to suck. Okay? It's either going to be awesome or it's going to suck. But I can pretty much guarantee you this. The presence or absence of Spider-Man is not going to be what determines whether this is a good movie or a bad movie. If it's a great story with a great script and they explain the origin of Venom and do all this kind of stuff and they do it without Spider-Man, then great. The lack of Spider-Man isn't going to make it just because in principle it's a bad movie. No, it was a good movie. They did a good job putting this movie together and audiences liked it. Or they'll make a bad movie. But if they make a bad movie with a bad story and bad direction, just having Spider-Man there isn't going to magically make it any better, right? Spider-Man was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. That didn't magically make that film great. Spider-Man was in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3. That didn't magically make that movie great. Look, Spider-Man 3, you had Venom with Spider-Man. Magic formula for greatness. Nope. Didn't work. Didn't work. And then there are people who go, well, that was the studio's fault because they made him make a movie with Venom. Well, no, that's still on Sam Raimi. If the studio tells you make this movie with Venom, then just make a good movie with Venom. It's mind blown. Guess what? Marvel told Joss Whedon he wanted to have Wasp in Avengers. He did not want to have Scarlet Witch. Or I keep saying Scarlet Witch. He didn't want to have Black Widow. He didn't want Black Widow in Avengers. But the studio dictated to Joss Whedon, no Wasp, and absolutely you have to put in Black Widow. And Joss Whedon just went then, okay, then I'll just make a good movie with Black Widow. That's what Sam Raimi should have done. Lots of studios and lots of great movies have characters or things that the studio mandates to the director, and the directors just go and make a good movie with that. The studio tells Sam Raimi, Sam, we want you to make Spider-Man 3, but our directive to you, since it's our movie, our directive to you is make it about Spider-Man and Venom. Make sure it has Venom in it. And maybe that wasn't Sam Raimi's original plan, but now it's on Sam Raimi as the director. Okay, then I'm going to go and I'm going to make sure we put together a good movie with Venom. Just as that. Still, it's an impossible task. Making a good movie is very difficult. But I think it totally has a chance to be good or bad with or without Spider-Man. It has a total chance to be terrible, has a total chance to be mind-blowing. Let's just kind of wait and see. Let's not let the principle that Spider-Man's not there. Well, you had Spider-Man and Venom together in Spider-Man 3. So let's give them a chance. Let's see what happens. And if it sucks, it sucks. And if it's great, be willing to say it's great. And don't just stomp your feet and go, well, just in principle, I'm going to say it's bad. Just don't do that. You're doing a disservice to yourself as a fan, and you're doing a disservice to the fan community as a whole. Let's see if the movie sucks. Maybe it will. Okay? Or maybe it won't. All right. Last email question of the day, and then we're going to go to the live questions. And this last email today comes to us from Mark Ayuang, who writes, with the success of Transformers movies, I thought that we would see many more giant robot movies like Robotech, Gundam, etc. Why do you think that the big studios haven't greenlit any of these types of movies? I believe there would be an audience for these. Well, thanks a lot for the question, man. And there's a couple things to keep in mind. Yeah, when Transformers became a big hit, I remember when the first Transformers movie came out, made a bunch of money. Then all of a sudden, a whole bunch of news started coming out that I believe it was Tobey Maguire had agreed to sign up as a producer and would star in a Robotech movie. Well, that was like 10 years ago. Or 9 years, however many years ago that was. And that never came about and that never happened. I think it's because studios realize Transformers is a very unique IP. Transformers isn't just giant robots. Transformers is an IP that is rooted in nostalgia for a hell of a lot of people. A lot more than Robotech, all right? And it's a much more recognizable IP. It's a much more easily converted to the big screen kind of IP. There's lots of different reasons why a property like Transformers, I'm not saying Transformers is a better property than Robotech for those of you who are screaming at the screen, but I think even those of you who are big Robotech fans, you'll acknowledge that it's an easier property to bring to the screen and make very palatable for a wider movie-going audience than say a Robotech is, or a Macross or something like that. Like that's a little bit more out there to try to get the average film goer plugged into. But more important than that is that Hollywood did then greenlight another big giant robot movie. They greenlit a giant robot movie versus giant monster movie. And that, of course, was Pacific Rim. And Pacific Rim barely broke even. Barely broke even. Like while Transformers was out there pulling around, like pulling in billions of dollars. Let me just pull up I think it's around 400 million was Pacific Rim. Let me see. How Pacific Rim. Let me see how much. I'll get you the actual number here. Pacific Rim, the first one, made $411 million on a $200 million budget. I'll be honest with you, I'm not even sure it broke even. So studios look at that and go, well, wait a minute. Look, a Robotech movie is not a cheap movie to make. You cannot make Robotech for any bare minimum budget you would need for a Robotech movie is probably $160, $170 million. You're probably going north of $200 million. So studios sit back and go, well, you know what? Obviously, it's not that giant robot movie automatically means big box office because Pacific Rim came out. Even Godzilla and the most recent King Kong, they didn't do gangbusters at the box office. So, and there's some similarities. There's some correlation between giant monster movies and giant robot movies. So they did okay, but it's not like they blew the doors off anything. So for a studio to sit back and go, there's not a lot of track record of success, not to mention the last Transformers movie is taking a huge dip in its profit margin compared to the previous one. So could they be in decline? I'll be honest with you. I don't know how Pacific Rim Uprising is going to do. I just don't know. I'm not saying it's going to do bad. I'm just saying I'm not sure it's going to do all that well either. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of stuff that's up in the air right now. And we'll just have to see how this all plays out. But I think that's the main reason why you're not seeing studios lining up and falling over themselves backwards to get giant robot movies out there, because they have struggled. They have struggled. All right. Now we're going to go to you guys who are watching live. I said we would save some time to take your live questions, and we're going to do that right now. So let's get things going with this. The first question today that I'm pulling off of Twitter. This is, of course, you guys who are watching live. Matt Yamasaki writes, "Hey, John, my wife loves everything about Tron Legacy. Do you think we'll ever get a reboot, soft reboot, sequel?" I think at some point we will get more Tron stuff. I don't see a sequel to Tron. I mean, I heard about a lot of people talking about there was an attempt. There was another attempt recently. They brought in a couple of writers to write a script to see how it would come together, blah, blah, blah. It's just the first one did not do anywhere near what Disney thought it was going to do. They just didn't think it worked out nearly as well as they were hoping it would. Could it still happen? Possibly. I would, if I had to put $10 on a bet right now, I'm going to say at least within the next 5 years, no. Probably within the next 5 years, no. That's just my guess. Here's hoping I'm wrong. All right, next tweet comes to us, if I can get it to come up, comes to us from Random Indian G, who writes, I swear, some of your guys' Twitter handles are amazing. John, do you think CGI actors will replace humans in future Hollywood movies? Nah. I think there will be occasions. I think there will be the odd example of that happening, but it will never be easier than just actually getting an actor on screen to do it. Just getting an actor on screen is far less expensive, far less more man hours intensive than trying to do a CG character. And for that reason alone, I don't see why it would ever happen. I mean, like, again, I think there will be instances, I think there will be examples, but for the most part, it's just far easier, far simpler, far more realistic, and more importantly, far cheaper just to get an actor on the screen in front of the camera. It's just an easier way to do it. All right, next one comes to us from CJ Pats Fan 5, writes, all right, fellow Pats fan. John, do you consider Jake Gyllenhaal as one of the best actors today? If so, where would you rank him? He's got to be in the conversation. He's got to at least be in the conversation, especially after watching Nightcrawler and his which I finally got around to watching Strong. He was very good in Strong. I think there's an outside shot he could get some Oscar love for Strong, but we'll see. Okay, so right up there, you've got obviously Daniel Day-Lewis. You've got your Russell Crowe. You got your, I believe, Chiwetel Ejiofor. You've got Leonardo DiCaprio, clearly. You've got, I mean, look, there's a lot of good ones. Does Jake Gyllenhaal belong in that conversation? You know what? I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. If you're going to have a conversation about top 5 actors working today, whether or not Gyllenhaal makes it on that list, he's got to be in the conversation. He has to be a part of that debate. That's where I think he's at right now. That's just my opinion. So we'll see how he continues to flourish. Okay, next question comes to us from Harishiko, who writes, do you think that James McAvoy will be nominated for an Academy Award for his performance in Split? Or is it too late? It has nothing to do with it being too late. No, he won't get nominated for for his performance in that. There's just too many others that have already exceeded it. And there are more to come between now and the end of December that will also exceed it. So, no, I think he did a great job, but I do not think he's going to get an Academy Award nomination, nor would I believe that he deserves it. He did great. He was awesome in it, absolutely. But it's not in the same vein as some of the other performances that are going to be in that same category. So that's just my opinion. Hopefully I'm wrong. Next one comes to us from TJ Lynn, 1981, who writes, John, award season is coming. You could argue it's already the beginning's already here. Can you think of 2 to 3 movies so far who have legitimate chances to knob Best Picture nominations? Thanks. I think with in now that we live in an era where up to 10 films get nominated, I believe Blade Runner 2049, I believe that's going to get a Best Picture nomination. I am still believing that Logan is going to get a Best Picture nomination. It absolutely, to me, it's still the best movie of the year. And right now, I would think Wind River deserves one. I really do. I think Wind River deserves a nomination. Outside chances go to films like The Big Sick. The Big Sick right now, I think, would have to be in the conversation. So there are a couple there. Again, though, we're getting into that time of the year now that we're going to really see the films that are really going to stand out. And then we'll have a better idea, probably in about a month and a half, we'll have a better idea about which films that have already come out this year could have some legitimate shots. All right, let's go to the next one. Where did it go? Here it is. Visuals by Nate writes, have you seen some other good, bad movies like The Room? Frightful Findings is my favorite. The one I usually go to about a movie that is so horrendously awful, it's awesome to watch, is, of course, the Vanilla Ice classic, Cool as Ice. That for me is even better than The Room. Like, to me, The Room, as far as movies so awful, you have to sit down and watch them, you're going to have a good time watching it. The Room is actually number 2 to me. The number 1 movie of that vein, to me, is easily Vanilla Ice's Cool as Ice. By far, no questions asked. It is one of the best movies to get a group of like 15 friends together after you've had some food and some drinks and say, okay, guys, we're all going to watch Cool as Ice together and watch it. You will have the time of your life. I promise. All right, let's see. Next one comes to us from rdrago66, who writes, John, why has Jennifer Lawrence become so undervalued in the last couple of years to the point that people are just waiting for her to retire? Look, no, she's not. She's not undervalued. Studios are still lining up to put her in their films. Jennifer Lawrence right now does not have to audition for movies right now. She has to sift through all the offers she gets for movies right now and decide which ones she wants to do and which ones she doesn't. And it's only a small vocal group online that express that. The average movie-going audience loves Jennifer Lawrence. They love Jennifer Lawrence. And she is truly one of the best top 5 actresses in the world today. She's just ridiculous. She's got so much naturally born talent, it's kind of revolting. But no, for the most part, it is a small percentage of people who are vocal Jennifer Lawrence haters. Very small percentage. All right, let's move on here. Let's see. We got Trevor Valentine, who writes, John, most underrated comic book movie. For me, it's Man of Steel. Yeah. I mean, Man of Steel, I think, is one of the top 10 best comic book movies ever made. And the fact of the matter is almost nobody would put that on the list. And I think that's the very definition of underrated. So I'll go with that one. Another one is not, well, it's a comic strip movie, but is Mystery Men. You guys hear me talk about Mystery Men all the time. I freaking love Mystery Men. And whenever somebody asks me about, John, what's the one movie that never got a sequel that you really wish got a sequel? Mystery Men. Mystery Men. I want to see the Blue Raja. I want to see the Shoveler. I want to see Mr. Furious. I want to see the Bowler. I want to see the Spleen. I want to see I want to see Casanova Frankenstein. I want to see Captain Amazing come back somehow, some way. I want to see all that goodness come back. That to me is, and it's a truly underrated film. More and more people got to see that. Okay, let's move on to this. I know a bunch of people have been asking about this one. Hakar GF Films writes, John, what do you think of the so-called apologies released of Kevin Spacey revealing his assault on a 14-year-old boy? Look, this is a big one, and there's a reason I didn't make this one. I knew somebody would bring it up in Twitter, which is fine. There's a reason I didn't put this up as one of my main topics, which is because this topic is a minefield. Because I refuse to ever become one of those people that just automatically assumes that an allegation against somebody is true. That is not what our society is built on, nor should it be. There should always be, in our society, the assumption of innocence until there's enough mounting evidence to prove otherwise. And I think we're seeing a lot of situations where there is enough mounting evidence to prove otherwise. Like at some point, after you cross 15 people saying the same thing, you got to start to really weigh that and consider that. This is a terrible situation, no matter how you spin it. This is an awful situation. It's just, and it's revolting and it's disgusting. Kevin Spacey claimed, first of all, it's interesting to know Kevin Spacey didn't come out to deny it. So, I mean, okay, good. I mean, good, I guess, good on him for that. He did not come out to deny it. He came out, and this is something that happened over 30 years ago, which doesn't make it any less awful. Not at all. And his thing is like, look, I don't have any recollection of this. If it did happen, then it's terrible that it happened and that I did it. And then I owe this guy extreme apologies. Here's the thing, and this is why I didn't want to make it one of my main topics, because I don't, what do I say to that? As a third party sitting outside watching this unfold, as an audience member, a guy who forcibly throws, well, and even then, it's unclear how forcibly, because obviously he let the kid go. But let's say it was forcibly, and it happened. And the fact of the matter is, apparently there were no witnesses. We're never going to know truly what happened. Is Kevin Spacey telling the truth? Like, is the kid telling the truth? No, the kid, he's now like an adult man. And he's on Star Trek Discovery. But there's a scenario here that he is absolutely 100% telling the truth. And Kevin Spacey is also 100% telling the truth. And I mean, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with that at this point. Here's the thing. This situation all takes on another new, radically different dynamic. If all of a sudden 2 or 3 other young boys start coming forward and saying that this happened to me too, with Kevin Spacey, then it takes on an entirely different nature on its own. All I can say is this, is that I don't know what happened. If it happened the way it's being described, it's horrible. And I would hope that if it's true, that Kevin Spacey is telling the truth, that it was a tragic thing he did while he was drunk, and he's never done anything like that since. I hope that's the case. There's the part of me that is a huge Kevin Spacey fan that wants to believe that. But in light of everything else that's going on in Hollywood at the same time, there's a part of me that has a hard time believing it. So, I mean, I don't know. This is not, I talk about movies, man. I talk about movies. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know how to feel about this right now. I don't know how we evaluate what we should assume is true and what we shouldn't assume is true. I want to believe in the principle that we don't just assume any allegation about a person is true when there's not like evidence or proof to support such a thing, especially such a thing that would destroy a person. But at the same time, we shouldn't live in a society where if somebody was victimized, we should just dismiss what they have to say unless you got it all on film. So, I mean, I don't know. I am so unqualified to give an actual reasonable opinion on this. Essentially, the most qualified thing I can say is that I am unqualified to give a real feeling on this, other than we shouldn't live in a society that dismisses the claims of a victim, while at the same time, we also should not live in a society that does not give the benefit of the doubt to the person who is the target of an allegation. It's horrible if it really happened. Does the fact that it was 30 years ago, and if it, say, never happened again, does that mitigate how horrible it is? I don't know. I'm unqualified. I'm so unqualified. I don't know. Except to say, bottom line, this is a horrible situation. It's horrible. And I hope it gets resolved somehow, because, I mean, I just don't know. And you know what? I'm betting a lot of you guys feel the same way I do. Like, you first read about it and you feel outrage. And then you think about it and you say, well, at this point, it's just one person making an allegation about something that supposedly happened 30 years ago when that dude was drunk and nobody else. Maybe it's not true. But then you go, but look, with everything that's going on, maybe it is true. And like, if you're like me, you just don't know how to feel about this, other than sick to your stomach and wish that this type of thing in our world didn't happen. Look, if it happened, and there's nothing suggesting this is, I'm just saying if, okay, I'm talking theoreticals here. If Kevin Spacey, as an adult grown man in his 30s, forcibly made a 14-year-old boy do something against that boy's will, then to hell with Kevin Spacey. All right? Let's say that. But I don't know if that's the case. I'm not even sure, reading the account from the victim of this, or from reading Kevin Spacey, that that's exactly what it is that happened. Like, apparently Kevin Spacey tried to initiate something, which is bad enough on its own. Even wanting to initiate something with a 14-year-old. Good God. And I get it. He was drunk. Anyway, the bottom line is I'm unqualified. And I don't know how I feel about it. And I think there's probably going to be more to come out about this one way or the other that might help us clarify. I don't know how to feel. I don't know how to feel about it right now, because there's just not enough information. There's just simply not enough information for me to feel strongly one way or the other. So again, highlighting this guy when it comes to these types of matters, totally unqualified, man. I talk about how much I don't like Jar Jar Binks in The Phantom Menace, all right? That's what I do. I talk about movies. This is way outside my pay grade, dude. And like, hopefully, I don't know how you guys feel as well, but I know a lot of you guys have been asking about it. I know a lot of you guys are, even before the live stream started, were writing on the live stream, hey, John, you're going to talk about this, you're going to talk about this, you're going to talk about this. I knew somebody would bring it up on Twitter and I would address it here, but yeah, there we are. All right, I'm going to get through a couple more here, and then we'll call it a day. The next one here comes to us from Perseus18, who writes, John, how much screen time do you think Billy Batson and Shazam will have to split? I got a feeling they're going to go, most of the screen time is going to be Captain Marvel. I think we'll see probably Captain Marvel show up in the first 20 minutes of the film. I think the first 20, I'm guessing here, this is all speculation and guess. I'm guessing the first 20 minutes of the film are going to be Billy-centric, and then Shazam will show up, and then I think probably 90% of the rest of the movie will be him in the form of Shazam. That's just a guess. I could be totally wrong, but that's what I'm guessing right now. Let's see here. This one comes from Trevor Valentine. John, do you agree that Man of Steel and Thor are both very underrated? Yeah, I think, Thor's another one. The original Thor, directed by the great Kenneth Branagh, is a great movie. It's a great movie. So I think that one is very underrated as well. Let's see. This one comes to us from Harka G Films, who writes, hey, John, who are your favorite film composers other than John Williams? A big fan from South Africa. Well, Zimmer has certainly become one of them, especially with his Man of Steel theme. I love the Man of Steel theme. But obviously John Williams is the number one. And the final Twitter question today I'll take. Let's see, where did it go? Okay, here we go. Maglia Paul writes, how will MoviePass help or affect the Regal experiment next year, 2018, for demand-based ticket prices? Honestly, I think MoviePass will stop working at Regal. I don't know this, but understand this. MoviePass already puts a limit on how expensive of movie tickets they'll cover for you. Like, they won't pay for 3D. They won't pay for premium experiences like AMC Prime or stuff like that. They won't pay for IMAX because these are all the higher priced tickets. So they let you know in advance, we're not going to pay for those. Well, they also don't work in, there's a local theater chain here in Los Angeles called ArcLight. But ArcLight is considered a premium theater where, like, just their average movie ticket is like over $18 at the ArcLight. And ArcLight's a great movie theater, but it's really expensive to go there. So MoviePass will not work. They won't let MoviePass work at ArcLight theaters. Understand that. If Regal starts doing things where, like, even a non-IMAX, non-3D movie is going to be like $21 for a ticket, you're going to see MoviePass start not working for those theaters. I have very little doubt that MoviePass will limit or restrict the usage of their service at theaters that do demand-based ticket pricing. Or they'll put a cap on it and they'll say, hey, you can buy a movie ticket with MoviePass that isn't 3D, isn't IMAX, isn't premium theater, that isn't more expensive than $16. And maybe they'll just do it that way. If a movie costs more than $16 to go in, MoviePass might just say, well, then we're restricting that because that's not a good financial model for us. So I think you will see it affect also other services we use like MoviePass and things of that likeness. All right, guys, that's it for me for this installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for joining me. Listen, don't forget, if you like these videos, click the thumbs up button. Make sure you share this video around. Jump down to the comment section, leave a comment. And remember, guys, in the comment section, one of the most fun things about being film fans is that we're all on the same team. We love movies and television. And the great thing is we love different movies and television. You may love one movie and you may hate another movie, and another person you're talking with may have completely opposite views. And we can debate and discuss and talk about our opinions. And that's the great thing about being film fans. Do me a favor, though. When we get into these awesome debates and discussions, in the comment section, keep in mind that the person you're talking to is on the same team as you. They're also a film fan. So let's not do what a lot of other places do, which is degrade into, oh, you don't like the same movie I do? Well, I'm going to act like I'm 6 fucking years old and say that you're an idiot. You know, let's not do that. Let's not do that. Let's just remember we're on the same team together and enjoy the debate. Let's be passionate and all that kind of stuff. Let's just remember we're all film fans together. All right, guys, that will do it for this installment of the show. Thank you so much for joining me. Got us a couple special things coming up later today. Keep your eyes open. That'll do it for me. Thanks a lot for joining me, guys. And until the next show, bye-bye.